Half a Life is a book written by V.S. Naipaul which marked his rise to the Nobel laureate in literature in 2001. Sir Vidiadhar Surajprasad Naipaul was born on August 17, 1932, Trinidad and died on August 11, 2018, London. He is a writer of Indian descent known for his pessimistic way of writing which is set in developing countries. Half a Life is a book about identity, independence, freedom and a sense of place of belonging. The first time I read this book, it didn't seem as much and I clearly didn't understand it too well. But after researching more and learning about this book, I can confidently say that this book has themes that every one of us can relate to. The heart of the novel can be found already 3/4 way through on the coast of an African nation where the main character of the novel, Muli Chandran, encounters a big light-eyed man who was being abused by his Portuguese boss. The big light-eyed man in this sense is used to describe the big sweating man with the abused light eyes. Thinking of the abused man, Willie questions, who will rescue that man? Who will avenge him? This question is of the utmost importance to Willie and also the central theme of Half Life. This question may be Willie thinking about someone else, but it is also clearly him describing himself as a person who appears to have no proper place in the world. Willie is a man who is simply living his life, trusting one day something will happen, some set of events which will take him to the place he belongs. Willie's father was a man of high caste who heard the call of Mahatma Gandhi early in his life and decided to make a sacrifice for a change in the society. He heeded the calls of Mahatma Gandhi and married a woman of low caste that the society and even his family disapproved of. Due to that reason, his father had a hard time in his life, unaccepted by the society and his family. Bitterly unhappy in India, Willie somehow manages to get a scholarship to a second-rate college in London and flees there, unhappy from his family background and sense of no proper identity. While in college, he begins to sense the disdain and indifference with which his father was treated, and his hatred for his father soon turns into empathy. He also begins to understand that the rules of the Indian society no longer bound him and he sensed a powerful feeling of finally being free. Thousands of miles away from home, where no one knew him, his culture and background, he felt as he could be anyone he wished to be. He felt as if he could write his own revolution, presenting himself as anyone he wished to be, and he does just that. He fabricates a past for himself and denies his divided individuality, presenting himself as a whole. He spends his life in this manner for some time while staying with the bohemian immigrants of London of the late 1950s and soon again realizes that the place where he was staying no longer seemed dazzling and beautiful as they once were. This again points us to the fact that he feels the sense of loneliness with no self-identity. For a certain time after that, he works as a part-time author of scripts for the BBC, which gives him courage to write some stories. He takes scenes and plots from other movies and reworks them to his own ones. After some time of writing like that, Willie gets tired and runs out of materials and altogether stops writing after publishing a little book of stories compiling every plot he reworked on. His book was universally neglected except a woman of mixed African background who tells him in a letter that for the first time his stories made her relate to her own life. That woman was Anna. Soon after meeting Anna and spending some time with her, Willie falls for her. The young woman who had similar experience to his own and feels as for the first time in his life he was finally accepted for who he was. He feels with Anna a sense of belonging and wholeness he never felt before. Later, when Anna decides to go back home to her Portuguese African country, he accompanies her. In that place where there was a huge social and cultural differentiation, he stays being a second-rank Portuguese, which was kind of a high status in its own. Surrounded with people like himself of mixed inheritance all beside him, he finally feels it as a place of complete acceptance. At this point, his view of acceptance and identity had already changed and he understood that the world which he had entered was at last also a half and half world, being surrounded by people with mixed inheritance. Wherever he turns, he sees people who are searching for a place in the world, and at the end of his African journey, He was still so caught up in his fears and anxiety that he failed to grasp that the sense of belonging, searching for meaning, and acceptance is, in truth, an universal condition. Willie is a man of intelligence and character who is blind to the full truth of himself. It is a state of mind that not only him, but all of us should be quite familiar to.